Arlington is rapidly developing into a modern urban community, but the county also has many historical buildings that need preserving. In our final story, Mary Curtius discovers how Arlington has engaged in an ambitious effort to identify and classify our historic resources, a historic resource inventory.
Today, Arlington County is known as a model for transit-oriented development, or smart growth. Our vibrant, modern urban villages represent the best of cutting-edge urban planning. But can we also take pride in Arlington's history? I'm meeting today with Michael Leventhal, the county's Historic Preservation Program Coordinator, who agreed to visit a few pieces of our heritage with me. Over the last several years, at the direction of the County Board, Michael and his staff have engaged in an ambitious effort to identify and classify historic resources across Arlington, a historic resources inventory. Some 400 properties were surveyed, analyzed, and ranked in historic importance. Of these, 23 were deemed essential historic properties. So Michael, this is beautiful, but is it truly historic?
It is. In the 1930s, when the Roosevelt administration took over in the New Deal, the first thing they needed was people to do all of the work for the bureaucracy that were being created by the Roosevelt administration. And in doing so, he had to develop housing for these people. The Pentagon was built from 1942 to 44, and this entire development was built at the same time. We had, from 1935 to 1954, 176 garden apartment complexes and single buildings built, far greater than anywhere else in the country, solely for government workers. And in Arlington County, one of the things that they demanded as these were being built is that they had to be built as permanent residences. And so they are all brick and slate roofs. These buildings, though they are built from the 40s, you can look at them, there's not a fissure in the stonework. They are as strong as ever. They are just absolutely exquisite. And the interior spaces, while they're somewhat small to people's standards who want to have a 5,000 square foot house, can still be malleable for current and contemporary life. And this is for people who are just worker bees. We're talking about secretaries, bean counters, the guys and the girls who worked in the pools in the government. This is their home.
So this was truly affordable housing.
Absolutely, and that it has been affordable housing basically since it was built. These are really the seminal buildings of our county.
And to be essential, you needed to not have been substantially changed, right?
You needed to be not altered, or if there had been changes, the changes did not change the content and the context of the architecture. Secondly, if it were designed by, let's say, Mirhan Musrobian, one of the great architects of Arlington, that would get you a point. If the complexes were still in whole, that would give you a point. There were a couple of added features. This was the first, the biggest, the largest. Those would give you a point. And of those buildings, we selected 23 as being really the essential buildings that when you drive through the county, if those buildings were not there, this would look like any other place. So we've seen the residential buildings, and this is the commercial buildings of the essential group. And this is Clarendon, and Clarendon was platted in 1900 and started development from the teens to about the 30s. And what you have across the street are the buildings that were built in this time period, where you have the Masonic building, the Clarendon Ballroom, Spider Kelly's, which used to be the sanitary market, grocery store, and the Oddfellows building, and then the Reeves building down there. And this is the beginning of the commercial area in Arlington County.
Now, Michael, I'm looking at these buildings. This is one of Arlington's most successful urban villages, and these buildings obviously have a new purpose. What makes them essential? What keeps them essential?
Well, the buildings have not changed architecturally. As you see them, while they have new uses, they have been very careful, very sensitive to the architecture, so they still read the way they've always read. With very minor changes, these buildings still represent the heart of Arlington's architectural history and heritage.
So we're not saying that the buildings have to maintain their original function.
Not at all, not at all. This is not to try to create an historic village where we wear costumes. This is a vibrant, ongoing community. The thing about preservation in Arlington is very pragmatically based. We try to save buildings, try to preserve buildings, try to encourage stewardship so that there's a passage through time in our community where you see buildings of different times, different periods, different ages.
So this isn't just a preservation tool, it's also a planning tool.
That is correct. The whole idea of the HRI is so that developers, people who own the property, know from the get-go if it's an essential building, it's a building that we would like to see incorporated into a plan rather than raised and something new built on the site. We want to deal with these people and let them know up front these buildings are important. We don't want developers to spend money on plans and attorney fees, only to find out at the very end that these buildings are valuable. They should know from the beginning, and we should work as a team to how to develop them properly.
So one of the advantages here from a developer's point of view is clarity.
That is correct. Transparency and clarity. So everyone knows up front what we think is valuable, what we think is secondary. These are our buildings. This represents our history, Arlington's history, and that's why they're essential to us. These are what make Arlington, Arlington.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really valuable.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for your interest.
Okay, let's take a look at some other
Okay.
things. The urgency behind this project is clear. Since the survey began, fully 1/4 of the 400 properties Michael looked at have been demolished. The time we have to look around and choose what we value of our past, what we wish to take with us into the future, is rapidly disappearing.
And as we leave, let's take a look at the entire list of Arlington's essential buildings. Thanks for watching. For ABN, I'm Mayo Best, and this has been Up Close.